So can you all get me? Okay. Uh, I'll take the silence for Anes. Uh, I hope all the teams have joined. Please confirm with me the opposition side and the government side. Confirm with your members if they have joined, because we are supposed to be starting. So allow me to begin. So I'm Moses Muchiri. I'm a student of economics and I'll be a moderator today. So we are convened here to debate on the motion of CBC. Is CBC the answer to Kenyan educational challenges? As we all know, the KICD developed a new curriculum, which is the curriculum-based competence, replacing the 844 in phases. So the new curriculum will be having their first candidates next year, who are now in grade 5. And now here we'll be having two teams debating on the motion. We have the government side, which will be taken by the School of Law, University of Nairobi, and we have the opposition side, which will be taken by the Economic Scholar Panel, University of Nairobi. Each team member will have 7 minutes, while the first 2 minutes will go uninterrupted. On the following 5 minutes, the other team or the other side is allowed to interrupt by raising their hand or unmuting and asking a point of information, which should not last more than 15 seconds. If it lasts more than 15 seconds, they will be muted or it will be dismissed. More so, each team must take at least 2 points of information, failure to which there will be a deduction of 2 points for the result for the teams that don't take them. And we'll start with the government side, and then we'll start with one representative of the government, and then go to the opposition to the end. Each team has 2 members, and we have 2 teams on each side, 2 on the government side and 2 on the opposition side. So if the government side is present, I would like them to unmute one by one and or raise their hand to show their presence. The government side, please. The government side, is any one of you here? Oh, and on adjudication, unfortunately, adjudicators, most of them declined at the last minute, and we are hoping to be joined by one of them. But in case that fails to happen, we'll use a poll to determine the winners and the learners at the end of it all. Nevertheless, we have observers who have diverse knowledge and experience on this matter and the debate. So we have Keffa Simuyu around. So he's one of our observer, and we allow him to give remarks at the end of it, as we hope that and the adjudicator will join with time. So I'm waiting on the government side to show an indicator that they are around. Do you have anybody from the government side? Okay, as we wait on the government side, uh, allow me to give Kefa some minutes to make some few remarks. Bwana Kefa, if you can get me.
Uh, yes, good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, I don't have much to say at this particular moment, but yeah, I look forward to an interesting session, a thrilling one. Yeah, particularly, I believe the debaters will do their best in bringing out the British parliamentary system, yeah, as well as helping us understand this issue of competence-based curriculum so that we can chart the way forward in matters policy. Yeah.
Thank you, Bwana Kefa. Since the School of Law is experiencing some inches, so allow me to confirm with them in a bit.
Hello, my name is Dorothy Mwanzile. I work at the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development, where we develop curriculum and curriculum support materials for all levels of education except the university. I want us to talk about the new curriculum, the competency-based curriculum, in short, CBC, the competency-based curriculum. I would like us to briefly discuss why the clamor for the new curriculum, why the clamor for CBC. The reason why it is important for a nation to change its curriculum is because times and seasons change, people change, situations change. The way things were 10, 20, 30 years ago is not the way they are. Even when you look at what's happening to us as a nation, socially, politically, a lot of things change. We have constitution that is now 10 years old, and we used to operate on an older constitution. Now, with these kind of changes, it's always important for a curriculum of a nation to change so that it can address the changes that happen in that community. So if communities are changing, then it becomes important for curriculum to also change, because curriculum is supposed to address the needs of the society in which it is learned. The competency-based curriculum is a major shift from what we used to have there before, or what we are moving to as a conclusion of, that is the 844 curriculum. And the competency-based curriculum is basically about a shift from objective-based curriculum, a shift from the content, whereby there was a lot of rote learning, whereby students and learners generally studied for examination, but not for the purpose of learning. We are having a shift towards CBC, and so that learners in our schools and in our learning institutions can be able to graduate with competencies. We are shifting from asking ourselves, what did you score when you cleared school or college, to asking ourselves, what do you know? And what can you do with what you know? Basically, that is the essence of the competency-based curriculum. The competency-based curriculum is supposed to equip the Kenyan learner with the 21st century skills, because communities are changing, like we are saying, the world is changing. And we are producing a child or a citizen, not just for Kenya alone, for the global, for the entire globe. And therefore, this means that then this child needs to be prepared and equipped thoroughly, not only to fit within Kenya, but also to fit within the systems of the entire world. So as society changes, then there is need for us to have the curriculum change so that this curriculum can address the needs of the changing society. What is the effect of a curriculum change on publishing houses, or on publishing, or on materials? Remember, we said that part of curriculum development and part of curriculum change has to do with developing the right materials. Therefore, then, the role of publishing houses is to be able to interpret that curriculum, what we call the curriculum design, to appropriately, correctly interpret the curriculum design, and then develop materials that are fitting with the curriculum design to address the intentions of the set curriculum. So that if a publishing house does understand what the curriculum says, and is able to look at the curriculum design and interpret it effectively,
Let's be patient for some minutes. The guys are sorting some issue from their end, but they will definitely be joining. Also, the adjudicator will be joining at 12:20. So I think we're still on track.
then it is obvious that the material they will come up with will then be addressing the issues that were intended by the curriculum. That is why we are saying that the role of publishers like KLB and among others is to be able to look at the curriculum design, interpret it effectively and correctly, then come up with materials that are addressing the issues that are raised in that curriculum. And I think the ability to come up with useful materials for a curriculum then is very important. And I would like to say that a number of publishing houses have set their foot in this, and they're doing well. I would like to single out KLB, that I have done 100% publishing, especially for the competency-based curriculum. They've published materials for pre-primary 1, what we call PP1. They've published materials for PP2 or pre-primary 2. They've also published materials for grade 1, grade 2, and grade 3, and also grade 4 and grade 5. I wish also to commend them, because out of all these entries they've made, over 90% of their materials have been approved. Remember, for every material that walks into a Kenyan school, it is paramount for that material to be evaluated by the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development, and KLB has done well to do this, submitted their materials to the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development, among other publishers, and most of their materials have been able to be approved for use in schools. And that is why you will find that for you as a teacher, for you as a learner, for you as a parent, if you're looking for a material that you want to use for school, one key thing you need to consider is the question of whether that material is approved by the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development or not. And how do you know that a material has been approved by the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development? The name or the title of that material is usually published in what we call an annual booklet that is produced by KICD, that is called the Orange Book. Within the pages of the Orange Book, you will find materials that have been approved by the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development, meaning that the content is useful and correct and appropriate enough to be used in schools. And KLB has done this for most of their materials. That's why you find quite a number of their programs quite a number of their materials have been able to pass this test. So you will find that we have their PP1 materials, what we call the Skill Grow, which is for PP1 and PP2, their Skill Grow series. A number of them have been able to be evaluated, passed the test, and they are therefore found in the Orange Book. And a number of their materials for primary school, that is grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, grade 4, and grade 5, what we call the visionary, the visionary series, is also approved and is available for you. So as a parent, as a teacher, it becomes important for you to ask yourself, the material that I'm using, is it evaluated? Is it approved by KICD? And can that title be found in the Orange Book? KLB have done well to do a lot of these checks and balances and been able to find quite a number of their materials in the Orange Book. Accompanying these materials is also a teacher's guide, which accompanies every piece that they have done. And the teacher's guide is very
Hello everyone. I hope now the government side has now joined. So I think we can begin. I think I'll have to repeat the beginning remarks. So please, if you're not speaking, please mute yourself to give us some time. So I'm Moses Muchiri. I am a third-year student of economics and statistics, and I'll be your moderator today. So today we'll be having a debate on using the BP format. The debate motion will be CBC is the answer to Kenyan educational challenges. We'll be having the government side, which will be the School of Law. The government side will have two teams. the opening team and the closing team, where the opening team will have the Prime Minister and the Deputy Prime Minister, and the closing team will have Member of Government and Government Whip. The opposition side will be having the Leader of Opposition as the opening team and the Deputy Leader of Opposition. And on the closing team, we'll have the Member of Opposition and the Opposition Whip. Each person will have 7 minutes to do their presentation, where the first 2 will go uninterrupted, but the following 5, a point of information can be raised by the other teams. The point of information should not last more than 15 seconds. And for you to raise a point of information, you raise your hand or unmute and ask. That for you to get a go-ahead is dependent on the presenter at that particular time. And so if the 7 minutes expire and you're still speaking, you'll be muted. So we start with the government side. The Prime Minister, please go ahead. The government side, I think you guys just joined. Please. Who is in charge of the Prime Minister role? Okay. There have been some development. I think the School of Law is not willing to engage in this debate. I don't know why. They are not responding. So I think, yeah, we have more like a panel discussion on the same, because we are already here and we can't cancel this. So I'll let the opposition side speak, and then any of us who is joining us who feels they're in support of this, we'll give them time, and then we'll have a 45 minutes deliberation on the same, and we'll call it a day. So the opposition side, the leader of opposition should just go ahead.
Sorry, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Esther Ngendo. I am from the Economic. Apologies for the inconvenience of not having the government side with us today. We'll proceed with the input from the opposition side and from the members in attendance. So allow me to flow of the connection, and CBC is the changes. So first of all, I would like to challenges, because terming them as Kenyan educational challenges origin, a Kenyan origin, which is not the case. It's just that it's challenges that Kenya sector. So our main focus today was the motion CBC is the answer to Kenyan educational challenges. And when we talk of CBC, we refer to the competency-based curriculum that was set to replace the 844 system in Kenya. So the format in the education system, we had the 7423, that was a formal education system that was introduced by the British colonial rule in 1963. Under that system, we had learners spending 7 years in primary school, 4 years in lower secondary school, 2 years in upper secondary school, and a minimum of 3 years in university education. In 1985, the 7423 education system was replaced by the 844 system, where we had learners spending 8 years in primary school, 4 years in secondary school, and a minimum of 4 years in 2017, we had the competency-based curriculum introduced mainly to address the challenges that for force system. And under the competency-based curriculum, we have the 2633, where we have learners spending 2 years in pre-primary, 6 years in primary, 3 years in junior secondary school, 3 years in senior secondary school, and a minimum of 3 years in tertiary education. So under the CBC education system, we see that a learner transitions through a minimum of 17 levels, where each level is 1 year long. And the learning under the competency-based curriculum can be categorized into 4 main general categories, which include early year education, which encompasses pre-primary and lower primary. We also have middle school that encompasses upper primary and lower secondary. We have the senior school that is the upper secondary school, and we have tertiary education that refers to both the TVET institution learning and university learning. So some of the main differences between the 844 system and the CBC system is that the CBC system is mainly focused in a learner's ability, unlike the 844 system where we had students undertaking examinations at a national level. Then under the senior school in the CBC system, we'll have learners undertaking lessons based either on arts and sports sciences, social sciences, and also STEM. So the main problems that the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development identified as failures of be addressed by the CBC system include the problem of examination orientation by the 844 system, overemphasis on content coverage. There was the lack of ICT infrastructure, lack of career guidance, and also the lack of special needs curriculum. So 844 was identified as mainly being exam-oriented, where students sat for summative examinations at Class 8 and Form 4, mainly the Kenya Certificate of Primary Education and the Kenya Certificate of Secondary Education. There was also an overemphasis of content coverage, where learners were mainly theoretical, and this accused of not having the skills that the job market needed, as most of focused rather than skill focused. Then there was also the issue on the lack of special needs curriculum. All the learners were placed in one basket, both impaired and even physically handicapped, and they were all expected to sit for a similar exam, which disadvantaged them. And CBC seeks to enrich the curriculum because we have an enriched curriculum for the gifted. We have a regular curriculum with adaptation and intervention programs for the physically handicapped. And we also have a regular curriculum with intervention programs for the communication, behavior disordered, and learning disability. We also have a specialized curriculum and intervention programs handicapped, deafblind.
Okay, Opi, I'm coming.
Handicapped. And there is also home-based or hospital intervention programs for those with profound disabilities. And so from there, I'll seek to present my case that I was to present in the debate on whether CBC actually in Kenya. So I will start by pointing out that education is a critical component in every individual's life, is to promote a person's holistic development, its evident advantages, distance. Education has the potential to improve society as a whole. People are aware of their rights and responsibilities, and education seeks to improve all dimensions of the human experience. Martin Luther King Jr., in his speech, says, and I quote, that the function of education is to teach one to think intensively and to think critically, but education which stops with efficiency may prove the greatest menace to society. The most dangerous criminal may be the man gifted with reason but no morals. We must remember that intelligence is not enough. Intelligence plus character, that is the goal of true education. The complete education gives one not only power of concentration, but worthy objectives upon which to concentrate. End of quote. So what I'd like to say is, up until now, we have proceeded from the premise that Kenya's educational challenges are hinged on the country's education system. I'm going to point out to you challenges that have been facing the education system in Kenya, and we are all going to see that these challenges are not necessarily experienced because of a certain education system. It's mainly because we can attribute it to lack of goodwill among stakeholders who are in charge of driving the docket of education. So some of the challenges include, one, we have teachers' pay. The salient role that a teacher plays in our lives is one that we all recognize. Teachers equip us with knowledge, skills, and lessons that we carry throughout our lives. And for many years, the Kenyan government has been unable to pay adequate salaries to teachers, leading to strikes. And this makes them look for alternative sources of income, reducing the amount of time spent on sharpening students. Beside that, the low pay has also denied the teaching profession the prestige that it truly deserves. So the government ought to increase salaries to teachers so that they can feel valued and appreciated, which will in turn translate into better service delivery and higher education outcomes. Another challenge that has been facing the education sector in Kenya is inadequate number of schools. So the number of public schools in Kenya is low compared to the number of learners, and this leads to congestion in classrooms, negatively affecting. What the government ought to do is to allocate more funds to the Constituency Development Fund, CDF. This is this is having in mind that one of the mandates of the Constituency Development Fund is to build schools. Besides that, gender disparity is another problem that has been facing the education system in Kenya. And gender disparities are evidenced by the differences in educational outcomes observed between different genders through enrollment rates and dropout rates. UNICEF report exists among the poorest quintile group of Kenya, with attendance rate being 33.1% and 25% for males and females respectively. We can say that addressing the problem of gender that needs to be done. Face the education system in Kenya is poverty. And in a World Bank group, poverty and equity, the population living below the national poverty line in 2015 was 36.1%. And 6.3% of workers in Kenya were estimated to be living dollars per day in 2021. So with this data in mind, we see that for families living below the poverty line, children are forced to engage in child labor to supplement family income, and this is at the cost of their education. In poverty alleviation, empowerment, And this can be achieved through training where individuals can be equipped with skills that make them better placed to land jobs and other income generating opportunities. The problem facing Kenya's education system is teenage pregnancies. We see that most girls in rural Kenya, and the stigma and embarrassment that is associated with teenage pregnancies causes them to drop out of school. So in response to this, government and non-governmental organizations should come together to sensitize girls on the dangers of early pregnancies and even how they can stay safe. In addition to that, teenage mothers can be encouraged to go back to school since it's their constitutional right to get education. Besides that, inadequate facilities is another major challenge that faces the education system in Kenya. Kenya has a high population density, and overcrowding is something that we witness in public schools. Public schools also suffer from inadequate toilets and sanitation facilities, and even inadequate desks. So governments ought to ensure that schools have facilities that efficiently serve the learners, allocating more funds to the education sector. And besides that, corruption is also another problem that is facing the education sector. One, we have embezzlement of funds by people who've been entrusted to purchase learning resources and even construct infrastructure for the students. In addition to that, we also see corruption cases in the country that funnel away resources that could be spent in developing various areas in the education sector. So the fight against corruption should be beefed up to where we actually even get to see recovery of assets and proceeds from corruption activities being channeled back to public resources and even reallocated to various sectors of the economy, and one of the sectors being the education sector. The items that is crippling our education sector, because in Kenya, public education are required to promote policies of the ruling party. And this is a major issue since politicians frequently use their power to appoint loyalists as directors to make budgetary allocations that benefit them rather than meet Kenya's educational needs. So reforms in the education sector ought to be devoid of politics to promote. So what I'd like to say that today is Kenya's educational challenges are not a question of the curriculum used. It is a matter of goodwill among all stakeholders and a coordinated approach to solve the problems at hand. So the CBC seeks to address failures of not Kenya's education challenges. So CBC provides a solution to the problems I had stated earlier of 844 being examination oriented, there being then there's also the lack of special needs curriculum and the lack of career guidance, but it does not solve the Kenya's education system. Thank you. That is my submission. Yes, Douglas.
Seems we lost Douglas, he left. So I think we listen to the opposition side to the end. Let's the opposition side please try to take 7 minutes, and then anybody else who will make this open. So anybody who is in support of CBC or against, to just raise their hand or write in the comment section, and then we'll give you time and we can proceed. Thank you. So the next person.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Mugo Mungai, aka Mem. I was supposed to be representing I'm still representing the Deputy Prime Minister, but since my Prime Minister has submitted a positive review of the CBC, I will be scathing about it. I'll stick to my original plan. Well, anyway, the first thing with CBC that I submit is that it's very expensive. I think that the same aim can be achieved, but using a much more efficient route. For example, the current regime's drive to try and equip every child in Kenya with a laptop or some kind of ICT device has been a major drive for a couple of years now, and it should keep on. It should remain on the budget of every government hereafter. Next, I'd say that you need only equip high schools with better career departments, and there should be the retraining, or rather an update in the knowledge of the current teachers. Since you see, it's not really the kids, the students that the problem lies with. It's a system they find and they join in. So there should be the retraining of teachers. I think there should be the investment of ICT infrastructure and the simple incorporation of some of these TVET institutions and computer package schools into the current system. By this, I mean introducing computer packages or computer science to children while they're still very small, since these are the demands of the 21st century. So all in all, I'd say that is very expensive, number one. And number two, I think the problem with our education is reflected in the problems our country experiences. There are very common names, common themes, common headlines that you see everywhere: corruption, stealing, fraud. This is one of the things that can be cured via our education system. And I submit this by simply introducing a few subjects, a few topics into the curriculum, into the syllabus of children while they're still very small, which include morality and ethics. So we could double down on the religious side, or we can integrate it with the classical literature of old, and of course some element of logic. I believe that CBC, some of the reasons they give as to why it was unveiled, they say 844 was exam oriented. Kenyans need skills. I'd say that CBC in the current form that it is now has more exam oriented, is more exam oriented. I mean, there are more national exams. The students stay in school for longer, or one might say that the schools get the children early on. So I would say that a simple introduction of morality and ethics to children while they're still very, very small is going to change a whole generation and generations thereafter. This story about corruption, fraud, theft, it's how we teach our children. It's a legacy we leave. Yeah? And one of the reasons I feel CBC in its current form is not suitable is that it's a copy-paste from Israel. Israel have more or less the same system, but you must realize there are problems with copy-pasting. Israel have different demographics, different government structure, different beliefs of the population. I mean, there's so much that's different between our countries that a copy paste will likely end in disaster, like everything else we copy paste from the West. And this copy pasting is what has undone Africans in general. Anyone kissed by the sun, whose skin has been kissed by the sun, Africans have not been given a chance to express their African identity on the global stage. You look at the Chinese, the Russians, the British, the French. Everyone has a kind of a unique identity, but Africans, we've been denied that opportunity by this copy-pasting nonsense. And I submit that if we do not do anything about it now, it'll reach a point that will be too late. And these times of curriculum change are one of the most important. And we should do it right. And I submit that CBC in its current form does not answer Kenyan educational challenges, and if I may, by extension, African challenges. Yeah. I'm gonna give a short story. I had the privilege of having benchmarkers from abroad come to our school, and it was very interesting that there were significant gaps in their knowledge. There were some things that they didn't know that, well, people from here, you can just do the exam and pass any of the exams that they offer there on their side. But when they came here, you could identify significant gaps in their knowledge. It was clear that their system was clearly skills-oriented, not knowledge-based oriented. I submit that students should be given all the knowledge that they can be given at a certain period of time. But what's more important is to be taught how to think, how to process that knowledge, to consolidate and crystallize it into future aspirations and plans, which now this comes in of course, the better trained teachers who help them, and improved career officers, people who are supposed to guide them. And the generation that will usher in after a review of this system and an incorporation of some of the things I've said will be maybe the generation to change our lives as we know it here in Kenya and her region. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Mungai. So we march on. Remember, if you have any questions, any interaction. Yes, Keffa.
Yes, I have a short intervention on this particular issue. Yeah, in particular, I think I have a case for the government. Yeah, we understand that the opposition, in particular through their deputy leader, has mentioned something that what our children need to be taught is on how to synthesize knowledge. Yet CBC has actually focused on that particular issue. For instance, previously in Standard 4, a child could be given a story on kite flying, that kind of stuff. Currently, at the moment, a child is requested to seek for guidance from a parent on how to make a kite and use it. Again, these children previously could only hear rumors of how to prepare meals. But at the moment, they are not only being taught how to do so, but they are actually practicing it. Another issue that was mentioned by the opposition was that what Kenya needed was actually to retrain teachers. And indeed, panel, these worries me because the opposition clearly is not acquainted with the fact the Teacher Service Commission just recently called upon teachers to retrain, and everyone was on the streets frowning. So if again we go back to that, where exactly will we be headed? There is another issue that was mentioned that actually CBC was copy-pasted from Israel. Indeed, it is disturbing on our end because we live in a global community. We live in a society which is integrated, and it is always beneficial to learn from and benefit from the experiences of others. In that particular case, CBC did well in Israel, and that's why the opposition mentions it. And we believe as a country we can also do better than Israel, provided we learn from them. Another issue that was raised was that actually CBC takes 17 years, which is more time than the 844 system. Actually, the point here is that the longer you stay in school, the more you learn, the more knowledge you accumulate, the more useful you'll be to this society. And this is according to the economist Paul Romer, who actually told us that the whole essence of growth is that there is idea generation, which is a product of knowledge. Then there was an issue raised about the cost of CBC, that it is too costly. Yes, no one is disputing that. However, evidence has revealed that there is a trade-off between cost of something and the quality of what you receive. In particular, the higher the cost of CBC, the less incompetent our children will be. And the lower the cost of an education system, the more incompetent the children will be. For instance, in the 844 system, candidates in standard 8 had to respond to answers by simply ticking a box of A, B, C, D, which actually paved the way and made it possible for some of us to do some guesswork there. But with CBC, you will actually have to demonstrate to us that you understand what it is you are talking of. So I believe that CBC is not that problematic the way it has been made to appear. Regarding morals and integrity, CBC is promoting what we call shared learning at the family and community level. For instance, when you discuss with your parents on how to do something, you are getting closer to each other. You are sharing your thoughts openly with your parents, with your friends, peers, that kind of stuff. And that's actually what we need for a holistic society, a society where people can communicate with each other in a language that they understand. So based on that, I believe that Kenya's problem is one of structural rigidity that was as a result of 844 system, which later on culminated into redundancy to the point that we as Kenyans have become so resistant to change. Yet change is beneficial to all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Keffa. So the opposition team, you want to react to that?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. My name is Mitash Farsani, and I was initially supposed to hold place as a government member in this debate. And I will continue to propose my arguments, and thanks to Keffa, I have a couple of rebuttal points to add on to. So I'll start with my new propositions, right? First of all, the CBC's whole idea is to claim, rather it claims to prepare students for real life. We aren't even doing the basics with the CBC. Has taxation been shown anywhere? Has entrepreneurship even been mentioned on those things, on those syllabus outlines, and or as a unit anywhere? Practical examples have to be given on these areas, on subject areas. For example, I have the benefit of coming from not the 844 system, but a British system, which gives me a wider perspective, because being in the British system, I was also able to compare the 844 system, and I know the things we do in our systems are completely different. Let me give you a live example. We do something called business studies quite early on in our curriculum, right? And I do understand 844 did not display all this. But if you're bringing in CBC, then that means when you introduce business as a curriculum, you have to use live examples. It is why I find it much easier to join university with the different curriculum, right? But that doesn't mean that because you're bringing in CBC, it's going to match this level of practical knowledge integrated with education. To add on to that, is there a significant infrastructural change that is going to be accompanying the CBC? Not at the moment, at least, because at the moment we are very sure that the funds needed for CBC, that the transition to CBC is already so great. And CBC, for its effectiveness, it has to be accompanied by significant infrastructural changes. With the way CBC is presented, we should be seeing younger students play with educational toys, have proper classrooms, integrated classrooms with charts, visual contents, multiple storybooks from multiple cultures, what be it Kenyan, be it African, be it European, all of them come together. That's when someone truly learns about culture. Art items should be there, something to unleash the students' creativity. And I believe that that infrastructural, the pairing with infrastructural change on the CBC curriculum is not that strong. And this is strange because that was the whole reason CBC was set up, but we lack that kind of infrastructure and probably the funds to set it up too. And as my dear friend here, Keffa, Simuyu, said, the teachers need to be retrained. Yes, of course they need to be retrained. And if there is a public outcry just because teachers are supposed to be retrained, what kind of attitude does that show with the teachers of accepting the CBC? And if they cannot accept the CBC, how can they allow, how can they be able to, display all the benefits of the CBC, right? They need to be trained so they can connect to the students better. Let's be real. Some of these teachers are probably hesitant to the same change and the same kind of retraining to move from their old methods. I mean, that's not a bad thing. It's a common issue when it comes to change. But paired with such a big change on curriculum development, now that will be a major hindrance to the success of CBC, which is why I believe we should not go ahead with it. Furthermore, CBC may not encourage the same level of competition like the 844 system. Now, I know there will be very much contention with this point I am about to raise. That's why I'm going to pair it up with a significant number of evidence, right? Rather, a significant level of evidence. What's the incentive to work hard? Most of the time, that's competition. That's why businesses are efficient. That's why countries strive to increase their GDP. That's why we all strive to wake up and do something the next day. But when you're trying to say with CBC grades become less important, then how do you gauge your performance in relation to someone else's, right? How do you promote? What's pushing the students to work harder and become a better version of themselves? Let me give you a live example. I'll give you an example of India and China. Both of these countries have extremely competitive education systems. And it is for this reason that we see that China as a country has so much technical development, because this kind of competition promoted those students to do something and get out there and build a name for themselves in relation to others. The same with India, where the education system, you can see students coming out with averages out of 98%, 99% on 12th grade. And this kind of competition allows them to become a better version of themselves. With CBC, grades will become less important as advertised by the different bodies associated with CBC. And yes, I do understand, Moses, that CBC is graded, but I'd like to bring attention to the fact that when everyone has been talking about CBC, they are actually saying that the importance on grades will be less, and the importance on how the student actually performs is critical, right? And to add on to that point, actually, I'll bring in a point I was supposed to bring in later. It says the CBC will prevent the repeating of classes. Now, the reason CBC gives advantage is because it, as relation to this point of repeating classes, is because it claims it will prevent bullying and mixing of older students who have repeated many times with younger ones. But if they don't repeat in the early years, that means they have a weaker foundation. The basic math skills and other educational skills that most students have gained will not be as strong on weaker students who aren't forced to repeat. That means it's harder for them to grasp the more difficult concepts that are built from foundations. Furthermore, as I said, I came from a private education system, and therefore I know that most of the students who have come from private education actually end up going to universities abroad. And hear me out, this is the most critical part of this. This 844 system and other systems such as the IGCSE and GCSE are not very much different, right? And yet we have a higher percentage of students who are going from private schools into universities that are world-renowned, such as Yale, Harvard, Oxford, and other acclaimed universities. But the curriculum is not different. CBC actually is much more different, right? And yet it is private schools that are thriving. So I think the critical issue is not changing the curriculum, but adapting to the small changes. I'd like to bring in a term that we have learned quite often about called Kaizen production. And it is a very critical concept even when it comes to life. Kaizen is a word developed by the Japanese, and it basically means improvement slowly by slowly. When you see a problem, you don't come and disrupt the system. You come and you build these changes slowly, one by one. If you see there is an issue, let's sort smaller issues until the end result becomes something great. Right, that's the whole point of Kaizen, and that's what I believe we should be doing instead of CBC. That's all I have to say. In case there are any points of information, I'll be very happy to answer.
Yes, panel. Can I chip in once again?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, panel, for this opportunity once again as a swing. Yeah, and before I go further, my extension to this particular case draws from two cases that we have on the ground in Kenya. One is from the Hustler Nation wheelbarrow dynamics, and the second one is from the former Premier, Right Honorable Raila Odinga's 6,000 shillings proposal. We understand that the wheelbarrow actually requires technical skills for each to be brought to use. And the CBC, which is actually competence-based, is equipping our children with such competencies, such that a child is able to push that wheelbarrow, is able to use it to collect garbage, is able to use it to fetch water, is able to use it for a number of things. Then on the 6,000 shillings by the Right Honorable, we believe that such funds were supposed to guide our investment decisions as young people. But now, how will you invest if you have not worked hand in hand with captains of industry to know how things are done? And that's where the competence-based curriculum comes in. Our children, our brothers and sisters are being equipped with the relevant skills for them to invest in future. Besides, they are being apprenticed under people who have already made it in the business world. So we believe that there is no big problem as far as computers is best.
I'd
Yeah,
like
the
to, before you continue, Keffa, I assume that would have
yes.
been a point of information, and therefore I'd like to tackle it right away, if you do not mind.
Yes, 15 seconds, please.
Sorry?
15 seconds.
Right. So I thought it should be ill-mannered to integrate politics into education. As much as I appreciate as an economics student, they have a link. We're trying to talk about education, and we should stop integrating political motives into this.
Yeah, thank you for that timely intervention. We understand that man is a political animal, and we can which is actually that politics is the order of the day, be it in education, be it in philosophy, be it wherever it is. Politics is the order of the day, so you have to live with it. Then there was an issue that the opposition mentioned on it was not on productivity, but on incentives to work hard. And the opposition believes that actually a grade is the only incentive for someone to work hard. But we, as a government, we believe that the incentive to work hard is actually productivity. Yeah, productivity is the incentive for anyone to work hard and not for that grade. And why should we be productive? We are productive because future generations depend on how we do our things today. So if you just pick a grade A, B, C, D, E, a grade really doesn't mean much, because in future, when the generations to be will ask you, what did you do in your time? You will not tell them that I got an A, but they will want to see something tangible, a product maybe you came up with. And that's actually at the heart of CBC. Yes, again, there was another issue on taxation. That taxation is not being taught in CBC. But our concern is that a child who is in kindergarten, a child who is still lactating, of what benefit is tax policy lessons to that particular child? Teaching a 6-year-old tax policy will be just unreasonable. And indeed, that's one of the indicators that 844 system failed. That's why at the end of the day, we are still having people who are products of 844 believing that a small kid should be taught tax policy, should be taught cosmology, should be taught so many things at a go. Yet this child has a life to live. So indeed, we believe the CBC is the way forward. John Adams, the second president of the United States of America, mentioned that the reason they dealt with the tough questions of life was so that a posterity could enjoy softer things. CBC is tough, it is challenging, but challenges are there. They are there to make us strong, they are there to keep us on toes. So we must resist the temptation to give up on progressive ideas. CBC is a progressive idea, and you have to move forward with it because it has worked well in Israel, the way the opposition mentions, and learning from the best means that it is going to work well for Kenya. All we need is hope, all we need is optimism and support. Thank you.
I have a point of information I'd like to ask.
Yeah, go ahead.
To Keffa, I'll squeeze in both in my 15 seconds. First, how do you measure productivity for these young kids? And second thing, I did not mention teaching 6-year-olds taxation. However, it would be critical for them to learn in their final year of education, don't you think?
Yes, panel, although this is a violation of the structure, because I had already finished my submission, but productivity is simple. For instance, if we are teaching you on how to prepare, on how to bake bread, yeah, and person A prepares two loaves per day, person B prepares 10 loaves in a day, then we could say that person B is more productive than person A.
Okay, so we go to the next opposition member.
Thank you. I am the opposition whip, and I wish to bring to our attention a few things. when 844 was implemented, its core value and its core principle was to be open to vocational training and improve self-expression, self-discipline, and independence. That was the initial goal. And when you look at the 1985 records, it actually was meant to equip a student and equip a learner wholesomely, holistically. And actually, some of the course materials that are being introduced in CBC were originally there. Only that the problem came in as the reviewers that were doing the system, they went to drop some subjects like music, the foreign languages, art and craft. And so really, the 844 system was not bad from the very beginning, or rather from the vision that the people that came up with and vision. The actual problem has actually been with the reviews and the reforms that have been there, which have progressively been losing the core and the main point and principle that was proposed. And so actually bringing in a new system altogether will not actually solve it, because as my friends have mentioned, the implementation and the training of the teachers has actually not been that effective. If you look at the government proposes that we train around 60,000 students, not students but teachers, by the end of this year. That means there are still like some people who are supposed to handle students who've been going through CBC and they have not yet been trained. And this is actually a problem, because in its initial implementation, it was actually meant to be rolled out between 2017 to 2023. So it means if there are still guys that are not yet trained, perhaps by 2023 will not have actually acquired the main point, and we might also suffer from the point of the review and implementation of the initial programs. Something else to note, CBC also does not address the transitions in this sense. We don't know what the learners will be called, or what they are getting after each period of transition. And again, the bit on transition is actually very tricky, because we are going to have a very younger generation doing multiple transitions in that period. And also another problem of CBC in that sense of transition is that we are going to even have the regional imbalance, because they are proposing a situation whereby a learner just transitions in the region where they have been basically grown. And what that will do is that it will hinder people from interacting even more and more. And some problems which are brought about by the environment, that someone grows in and someone is exposed to, like, having a place where all people are, artistic, or they are following the art skill, and perhaps another region you find all guys have taken up the STEM courses, or another place where people have taken the social sciences, because the infrastructure at that region and infrastructure at that school is what is making them focus on that. And some other question that CBC does not answer is that it does not actually respond to some of the gaps which were occasioned by cheating. Say, for example, they are proposing a situation whereby the teachers are the ones who are doing the teachers of the students are the ones who are doing the assessment. What happens if my mom is a teacher in the school that I'm learning? What will prevent them from giving us or giving me good reviews and, help me transition from, the very initial stage to the last stage? Or maybe the teacher is my auntie, or, a fiancé to my brother. That can necessitate the cheating and the integrity bits that CBC is assuming to be solving. Also, how will this system again produce a holistic student? We've had my friend mention of a team that came, and you could hear gaps in a lecturer. CBC is basically focusing on the informal and informal sectors and growth of a person. Yet, a holistic learner is one who is supposed to have both the informal, formal, and informal skill base on their end. So perhaps we might think we are solving the issue of an holistic citizen, but in the long run, we are going to have people who are, just good at the non-formal and informal sector. And so we propose that instead of just having the CBC as a whole system rolled out, we should have reviewed the old system and the current system and actually looked at the loopholes which are there and tried to figure out how to solve them, as opposed to coming up with a an entire system, which will actually be affected because we know for sure we don't have the infrastructure. Yes, my school back in Kitui perhaps can only offer the STEM courses, but when you bring in the artistic things, it will actually going to be expensive because first, I mean, we are looking for water. How will you teach us about fishing, and yet water is actually a problem in my place? You cannot tell us, to practice such a skill in such a place, because but then when you open it to stuff like the 844, where a student from that region can actually go to a national school perhaps in coast and get to learn this thing. So the whole CBC system will actually have issues in the long run. But for now, what we could have done, because we already have a structure and something that is existing, we should have just reviewed some of the things that have been brought about, the issue on corruption, the issue on, people preferring national schools over other schools, and perhaps thought of how we are going to equip all those schools so that they can all fit in the standards which are there in the national schools and the British system, as my colleague has mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you very much for
Thank you.
presenting.
Yeah.
Keffa, you have a point of information?
It is not a point of information, but it is just a final submission for this government as a government whip. Yeah, so to it, my duties as government whip are just simple: identifying themes, clashes, or rebuttals. Yes, those two are the most important ones. So actually, the opposition maintains that reviews have increased flaws. And we, as the government, we believe that it was 844 which didn't work. And it didn't matter what effort you exerted in reviewing textbooks. Yes, again, there was another issue raised that the CBC does not answer a number of questions. For instance, what happens when my teacher is also my mother? This is a question of integrity and the trust we have developed and nurtured as a nation. It is not a question of CBC itself. Therefore, the question comes back to us. What have we been doing as a nation? Yeah? Have we cultured and cultivated the ethos of leadership, the ethos and national values that we endorsed in the Constitution of Kenya 2010? And this is particularly disturbing because the opposition ought to be patriotic enough to this particular land. Then there was another concern raised by the opposition that no one knows what kids get in the end. It is clear that CBC ensures that in the end, kids are productive, kids are reasonable, kids are individuals with integrity, with morals, people who believe in a better nation. So now to our substantive issue, the first one was on education, of which the opposition believed that CBC is much longer, but we as the government, we believe that the length of studying does not matter. What matters is that at the end of it all, we channel out individuals who are competent, who are productive, and who are resilient and committed to our nation-building agenda. The second theme was on corruption, whereby the opposition believes that actually CBC is going to perpetuate corruption, whereby a teacher who is also a parent does an assignment for their own kid, that kind of thing. And we as a government, we believe that our citizens are patriotic enough and they are upholding the national ethos and values of the Constitution of Kenya 2010, which they endorsed wholeheartedly without coercion. There was a theme on cost, that CBC is actually very costly, but as a government, we believe that there is a sacrifice and everything has a price. To get your kid to be competent, you have to pay the price, and that price is for you to endorse, accept, and implement CBC. On clashes, there was one on competence metric, whereby the opposition believes that getting a grade or scoring 10 out of 19 is a better metric. But we believe that grades do not matter. What matters is the skills you have acquired, which translate into productivity. We need our economy to grow. We need to prosper as a people. And how do we do that? We can only achieve that by being productive, not by having A grades or E grades. Then another clash was on global experience and best practice. The opposition maintains that CBC is an alien concept adopted from Israel. And we, as a government, we believe that we can benefit from the experience of others through a social learning process. Since CBC succeeded in Israel, it follows that it will succeed in Kenya. The justification is simple. It has nothing to do with color of the skin. It has everything to do with the fact that the people in Tel Aviv and those in Nairobi are human beings. And by being human beings, whatever one human can do, the other one can also do and achieve same or better results. So based on that, I believe that actually the government has carried the day. And in particular, I believe that the closing government has actually won this motion because it is the one that has actually tried to synthesize what the debate was about in terms of themes, in terms of clashes, as well as give a holistic intervention to this particular case. So with that, we rest our case, and thank you.
Thank you, Bwana Keffa. I think I'll open this discussion so everybody else is allowed to interrupt and say something, but for us to have some order, we raise our hand. I'll allocate 15 minutes for that.
Okay. Maybe before that, there is Mr. Elijah Bakari here.
Oh, yeah. Elijah Bakari will give us his observation at the very end. So we have 15 minutes of open discussion, and then we'll give him time. Okay, so any one of us who has something to say, whether on the opposing side or on the government side.
Yes, hi, I'd like to say something. Hey, Keffa.
Okay, go ahead.
Good afternoon, Keffa. You're giving a presentation and grading yourself.
Yes, good afternoon.
Yeah, that's very interesting to see. But yeah, that's the kind of spirit we need in this country. Yeah, if you're not selected, you select yourself. Now, there are some points of contention I have with some of the points you've raised. First of all, I think children don't already know what is good for Kenya. Children are blank slates. That's one of the reasons they are in school to begin with. Yeah, to acquire the knowledge passed down from those who have come before them in order to build a better future, what Christians call heaven on earth. Yeah, that's the pursuit, to create a better world for each and every human being here on this planet. Now, one of the problems with CBC is that specialization, especially in the informal sector, I heard you mentioning about baking breads, farming. So some of these things that we are about to focus on, some of these skills that you say that will be acquired will be useful in the future for these students are bound to become obsolete due to two reasons: computing and mechanization. Imagine having a population skilled in doing one of these informal sector jobs. Yeah, and as you know, I mean, history speaks for itself. Technology keeps on innovating and improving and replacing some of the jobs that we've known to be commonplace all of our lives. Yeah, it's an overhaul. It happens. It's pulling the carpet, the rug under people, and I submit that this will happen if we have a population that is too specialized in some of these areas that CBC is focusing a lot on. Now here I have the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics Economic Survey 2018 highlights, and it's very interesting actually, because that's when CBC began or was launched to the Kenyan public for debate and implementation. It's too bad I can't share my screen, but I will send some of the pictures to the group to be shared. It's very interesting that the number one share of wage employment by activity, by percentage, is education. It's 20.7%. In short, there are more teachers in Kenya. The biggest wage earner for people in Kenya is education. By that, I mean teachers. We have more teachers here in this country than, say, people in agriculture forestry and fishing, which comes second, manufacturing third, public administration and defense fourth, wholesale, retail trade and repair of things as fifth. Now, when it comes to equipping or to copy pasting curriculum model from one country to another, yes, we are a globalized world. But we are multicultural. We are not all the same. And that's a fact of life. People live their lives differently all around the globe. You cannot assume that people are the same in that regard. I think the definition you gave of globalization, yes, we're globalized now, but we are multicultural. Of course, there are efforts to make us homogenous for whatever reason, but that has yet to be seen. Copy pasting will have its effects, as everyone. So I submit that we don't have enough data on CBC. The effects will be seen by the generation that will graduate the very last class or the very last level. That's now when we are going to actually see what's going to be happening. And by that time, these people who are coming out of the system are the people who will leave this country too. And I hope that we teach them well, that we take care. I'm not saying that 844 was good or CBC is good. I'm just saying that CBC in its current form, yes, we are changing from 844 to CBC, but in its current form, CBC still needs changes. And the point you raised about it being not being expensive, but there's a price to everything. But what if the price is too high? Yeah, and you don't know it. So yes, I'll stop there to give room for.
Yes.
Thank you.
Please, somebody else who want to contribute, Keffa, Bwana Keffa, Kidogo, so that we realize how much time we should allocate to each one of us. Anybody else want to say something? By show of hands. Okay, since we don't have, so I'll give Keffa 2 minutes and then we'll go to the adjudicator to give his observation. Okay, Bwana Keffa, 2 minutes. Make it short.
Thank you, panel, for that. Yes, Mr. Mungai has mentioned something about our society being multicultural, and indeed CBC cherishes cultural diversity because it is anchored on the understanding that there is unity in diversity. Then there was another concern regarding specialization. Yes, earlier on, the opposition gave us an example of a school in Kitui, which intends training kids STEM education. But then CBC wants them also to learn things such as fishing, poetry, music. Yeah, we understand there are such challenges there. But now the point with the CBC is this. Even in that STEM education class, students will still need to be taught the soft part of life. They need fine arts. For instance, how will you crack a joke if you are not given the opportunity to crack jokes freely? Yeah? How will you be humorous in a tedious work environment if you are not given that enabling environment earlier on? Again, let's consider this person who is focused on engineering alone, yeah, and he has no room for the artistic. And this person wants to make love, or rather, he wants to woo the person of the other gender. How will that person do it? They will tend to be artistic in some way, maybe through chanting some serenades and that kind of stuff, which actually implies that CBC is an integration of both the soft skills of life and the other things that we consider to be the real deal, the real stuff. So with this, we believe CBC is just okay. Yeah, and it will work. 10 years to come, we'll be here celebrating the results of our struggles today. Yeah, so we just have to support it and move on.
Okay, Bwana Keffa. So I think we'll continue these discussions in the panel groups. I think we all have so many things to say, but it must be observed that we have so much incomplete data and information on the whole issue. And I think we should either look deeply into it and try to figure out. And I believe most of us here are in a point to influence policy. And so since we are in a point to do that, I think it's time we read deeply about this and advise policy makers on the same. So at this moment, I'll welcome Elijah Bakari. He was our adjudicator, unfortunately, one of the team cow, so they never attended, but it's fine. We have had a fruitful discussion. So, Bwana Bakari, welcome for your observations.
All right, thank you all for having me. I am aware, of course, that one of the teams was missing. Perhaps before I proceed, I should just ask, how many of us perhaps were doing debate in British parliamentary for the first time? Maybe you can just raise your hands for those of you that I've had speaking. I at least know one person who was not doing it for the first time. All right, so wait, only 2 people who are doing the British parliamentary system for the first time. 3. Oh, okay. I see. All right. So quite a number. All right, that adds up. So let me just start with the general comments, and maybe I'll get just a little bit specific. First of all, let me just let me first say kudos, guys, for this initiative to use debate to address issues and matters. I think this is a good thing, and personally, I think we should keep this up, in my opinion. So, of course, that is within your control, but I encourage you guys to keep this up. So, the reason I asked also about BP is I noticed just a few things about the system not necessarily being observed. So, by the end of the day, I just decided, to just follow the debate as it was going. But let me just encourage us to also look at the British parliamentary system of debate. And I want to believe within our institution, probably there is material is available. If material is not available, if communication can be made to me, I think I can find some of that material. Because with each of the members, there's a particular role you're supposed to play. There is what we call role fulfillment. There is particular things you're supposed to address. And I think I noticed specifically one member who seemed aware of what the roles are specifically. So there are particular roles, of course, you're supposed to be playing. There is a particular way things are supposed to go. I suspect that the team that was missing might have thrown us off a little bit, but that's okay. Even with that particular team having gone missing, there are ways you can still successfully approach it and have a progressive debate, so to say. So the main thing I would say is, guys, just look at British parliamentary so that there's role fulfillment. If you're the prime minister, deputy prime minister, leader of opposition, deputy leader, member of government, member of opposition, or one of the whips, there is a particular thing you're supposed to fulfill in a particular way. So maybe understanding those roles, I feel, would give these debates better productivity. The other thing I observed, I'll just give this also as a general point to just improve the quality of our debates, is many times when you make a claim, it is best to follow it with your reasoning and finally give some evidence. In some points, I saw that attempt being made, but in some places, things were left hanging where somebody only gave us reasoning, somebody gave us a claim and a little bit of reasoning, not even complete reasoning. So I felt in some parts that left our debates wanting. When it comes to giving us evidence, usually we use statistics, maybe data, as well as case studies. So when you hear that description, you can tell some of the places where that was done successfully, and of course, places where that did not necessarily happen. Maybe another thing is points of information, and just generally timing with the structure, because that would help. Speakers, you have 7 minutes. I encourage you to also take the 7 minutes to speak. Of course, observing, role fulfillment and the whole claim reasoning and evidence approach to your arguments. That would really do awesome for the debates, because even as I was listening to this debate, I realized maybe it's just the structure that a number of us are not familiar with, but I could see we knew what we wanted to say. I could see the content. I could see how we are talking about issues on entrepreneurship, taxation, the education systems. I was seeing issues about things like corruption. I was seeing issues of costs, competence. Essentially, the point is you're bringing up the issues that are supposed to come up in this particular debate. It's just that the structure that was being followed, was just a bit wanting for British parliamentary. Maybe another thing I would suggest is perhaps in future, because I want to trust another debate will be done, you can have the debate run as usual, from the Prime Minister all the way to the opposition whip, just the standard way, just between the participants while the rest of us are observers. And then right after we've run the standard debate, we can now perhaps have audience engagement on both sides. I feel maybe that would be more useful. I'm saying that maybe because from an adjudicator's perspective, I would find myself getting lost in the sense of who's speaking next, because I think in my mind there is a particular structure of who's supposed to speak next. So when we have not necessarily the usual arrangement, I kind of get confused and don't know how to follow the debate. I can follow it as an audience member, but following it now as an adjudicator becomes a little bit difficult. So maybe that's something I would suggest. Have the standard, you can start with discussions, of course, if you want. Then I'll move to the standard debate just for the sake of if somebody is adjudicating that debate. Then finally, you can still come back to the audience and have further discussion. To the people speaking at the debate also, always prepare for these debates. Think of what claims you want to make as opposition or as proposing or opposing. Think of the points you want to make. Then, realize those are claims. So go ahead to find what is your reasoning and look for the relevant evidence. I think somebody who was also, or somebody had said something. Let me just clarify something. Somebody had said something about how you give your arguments and also mark yourself. I believe that was, I don't know if that was Mugo. I don't remember. So what Keffa was doing here when he was playing the role of the whip, and the way the role of the whip is usually supposed to tell us, without necessarily adding new material, what were some of the themes that came up in the debate. What are some of the clashes? So ordinarily what a whip does, whether proposing or opposing whip, you tell us what the themes are, you tell us what the clashes are, and then you tell us, especially as you're discussing those clashes, why is it that the arguments from your side about that particular clash was stronger or more sensible than from the other side? That is why maybe you would had Keffa say something like, and I believe this is why our side carries the day, because something the whip does is they're supposed to tell us why their side has won. So that's part of the role. So I think by the end of the day, very good effort from everyone in terms of trying to figure out what are the issues that are supposed to be discussed. I could see that clearly people have thought about these issues and they're well informed. My only challenge was perhaps the British parliamentary structure. That was the one part I was having a few challenges. So that also made it difficult for me to grade this particular debate, because on one side I can hear very good speakers and good debaters, but then also when I applied to British parliamentary structure, a lot of stuff is perhaps left wanting. Yes, I think that's all. Unless there is a question, I'll take any question or comment, or if there's anything else somebody wished I did, because at least I have all the points here. If there is anything else someone wishes I did, you can also ask. I will go ahead and do exactly that.
Any questions? Okay, well, since we have none, so thank you for attending this debate, and sorry for all the inconveniences. I think we end it now, so have a great afternoon.
All right.
We are now allowed to leave.